Welcome into the Bear Squad Show. I am Joe George, post-game host. The Combine is currently going on, and the rumors are swirling from Tremaine Edmunds, Dexter, DJ Moore. It's all happening at the Combine.
I'm Adam Sager. Caden McDonald is a popular pick among mock drafts, but who else fits at pick 25, and who are our second-round loves that we like so far?
Bear down, Chicago. It's the Bears Squad. Everything Chicago Bears every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Windy City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From Soldier Field to the next great chapter, the Bears Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Bears Squad Show here on the Locked On Bears YouTube and audio channels. Joe George, Adam Sager here with you. Lauren Cox will join us in the second segment of the show as he is at the Combine. And Adam, there's a lot going on at the Combine. Not just the players working out and running 40s and getting their arm lengths measured. And is that the new version of hand size? Does it really matter? Seems to be the discussion of the Combine this year. But the rumors are swirling. We're going to talk about how Caden McDonald seems to be the popular pick for nearly every single mock draft. It feels like it's McDonald or Banks, but it's mostly McDonald at 25. Day two targets we like for the Bears and potential trade candidates that the Bears could acquire outside of Max Crosby. I got one guy in particular that I'm eyeing for the secondary for the Bears that we'll get to on today's show. But there's so much. We'll start with the two that we haven't really discussed yet on any of these shows because they're the newest ones. We'll start with Tremaine Edmunds. Reportedly is being allowed to seek a trade. He has been our number one cut watch guy, and if the Bears can't trade him, they're probably going to cut him. Adam, do you feel like there's value there at all for Tremaine Edmunds that someone might say, hey, we can get him for a late round pick and we can lock him up and we can help us out with a team like maybe the Titans who have $100 million in cap space?
Initial thought, absolutely not.
That was my initial thought too.
Yeah, nobody's going to give him that type of money, especially when he's about to hit free agency. Now, I guess if you absolutely love him, and you're willing to give up a sixth or a seventh and go get them, sure. But I mean, if you're only willing to give up a sixth or seventh, do you really want to pay him all the money that he's owed? So no, I don't see a Tremaine Edmunds trade happening. They'll cut him on March 11th, as they have basically said through the media. It will free up a bunch of cap space. That's what is about $15 million or so that the Bears would get in cap space. So yeah, I don't think there's any value in Tremaine Edmunds on the trade market.
I don't really either. It would really take a team that, he already has his eyes on, that, maybe he has two teams and his agents are telling people that and they're being serious, and it's going to be, okay, which one offers me the better contract? And someone could step in and say, hey, we want to guarantee that Edmunds is going to be ours, and we'll figure out the contract once he gets here. It feels unlikely. Like there's always kind of these reports out there in sports, and it's not just an NFL thing. It happens in NBA, MLB, when a lot of times when it's not a star player that's being granted permission for a trade, we all know how the story ends. It ends with the player getting cut. They hit free agency. I think that's fully what we should all be expecting with Edmunds at this point. A trade would stun me. I mean, Look, if someone called and offered you a seventh, you just say yes. You don't counter for Ryan Poles.
Right.
You might go, can we have a sixth? And if they go no, you go, okay, we'll take the seventh, and you move on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just getting any sort of extra draft capital, that you can use as an asset to maybe move up a couple spots if you see someone you like at a certain spot in the third round or whatever it is, and you only want to move up two spots and you have that extra seventh, that helps. So, yeah, I mean, if you can get some extra draft capital, sure, why not?
The next one that came out, Jordan Schultz reported a couple things. We'll hit both of his reports here next. But first, we'll start with Javon Dexter. Reportedly, Jordan Schultz is saying that teams are calling on Dexter, a class in the defensive tackle free agency class that's not very good. A guy that has had solid production, I think is fair to say, with the Bears. But look, he might be the best guy in the room. And I saw that as the number one argument that Bears fans have been making online is, why would you trade the best guy in the room? But, look, I'm 5'6", so if I'm the tallest little guy in the room, then, does it really matter? No, because a bunch of short people in the room with me. It's a bad room. and you can improve it, and you need to desperately improve it this offseason. So just because he might be the best guy in there right now, to me, it's just like the offensive line last year. You have to improve defensive tackle. So if people are actually going to call you about Dexter, then I think you have to be really open to the idea of saying, yes, we'll trade him.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely something that you're listening. You're taking the calls and you're saying, okay, what's your offer here? Is there any players available in this deal? Is, can you give us a defensive back that we need to fill a spot? So I think there's different ways you can look at it. But to me, when I think about a Gervon Dexter trade, you have Grady Jarrett for next year. That you're not getting off that money. He's there. So he can be the veteran in the room. The guy I'm looking at is, what do they really feel about Shamar Turner? It seemed like he kind of back and forth playing all over the defensive line. Do they feel like he can be a guy that steps into that 3 technique role and eventually becomes a starter, maybe plays behind Grady Jarrett next year? Also, it could open up 25 to a couple different players that are, defensive tackle prospects, more of the 3 technique variety compared to, say, Caden McDonald or Caleb Banks. So I think the Gervon Dexter thing is interesting. I'm curious what his value would be.
Lauren, you're at the combine. Nice to see you. We'll just start there, and we'll get back to the rumors here. How's the combine going? And the rumors are all over the place for the Bears, but how's the combine been going for you?
It's been good. It's not a lot of sleep, but running around quite a bit and trying to keep up with everything. But it's been fun. It's been wild. It's been a lot going on. But I'm glad to find some time to sneak in here between prospect interviews and everybody running around.
What do you think there about the Dexter rumors that he's potentially, teams are at least calling about him and are interested in seeing what kind of availability he would have from the Bears?
Yeah, it just, you could see him maybe not being exactly what Dennis Allen wants on the interior. Like, where Eberflus wanted these guys to kind of be hybrid nose tackle 3 techniques and kind of swap in between interchangeably. Like Dennis Allen in New Orleans, he had like smaller, faster 3 techniques, Sheldon Rankins and David Onyemata and even Brian Brzee. He was 300 pounds, but explosiveness off the snap. And there's one thing about Gervon Dexter, it's not a quick get off, so he's kind of not quite the 3 technique pass rusher, but then he's also not quite the super stout run defending nose tackle either. Like he's kind of good at both, but not great at either. It's kind of in this middle ground. So if you're like, well, they probably don't want to give him a contract extension, so he'll be a free agent next year. So would you rather try and get something for him now as opposed to playing it out and seeing how it goes, or just saying, I think Dennis Allen really wants to get more of his guys in there, and I'm not anticipating the trade value is going to be super high. I mean, if Javondre Sweat goes for Jermaine Johnson to the Jets, like a lot of the other defensive tackle trades we saw, like Derek Nottie from the Chiefs, it was like a swap of 6th and 7th round picks. Like I don't think you're going to get a ton there because he's a pending free agent, and so new team's going to have to give him a new deal. But if you're planning on revamping the defensive tackle position anyway, then might as well make all the changes all at once.
Yeah, it's interesting just to see like where they could go, and look, there's a lot. There's so many rumors, and we can get into a little bit more on Tyson and maybe what you're hearing, Lauren, there at the combine, if he's a popular name amongst people. But there's so much going on. I mean, I was literally, before we started, was reading a story about mutual interest between the Minnesota Vikings and Anthony Richardson. I'm like, oh, okay, like we're really going for every single rumor we can in regards to quarterbacks and backup quarterbacks. But Adam, what were you at with Tyson? Because I mentioned this before we started, but the Bears reportedly met with the North Dakota State quarterback today, so that's going to get everyone's ears perked up about a Tyson Bagent trade. But Adam, how do you feel about the idea of someone calls and say, okay, yeah, we're going to trade a solid backup for draft capital?
I mean, it depends on what that draft capital is. I mean, we've seen everything from some reporters talking about a 2nd round pick all the way down to like a 5th round pick. So the variance is so great that I think you really got to know what the value is. I mean, if you're talking a 3rd round pick for Tyson Bagent, let's say, then yeah, I'm listening, because there's guys out there that can do what Tyson Bagent can do. There's guys out there that won't cost a ton of money, and it would save you a little bit of cap space by trading them. So I think I would be open to it. I'm definitely ears open, listening to every call that comes in. And if someone gets to that 3rd, even if it's a 2027 3rd that can become a 2nd if he hits these certain standards, or something along those lines, yes, I'm in. Go get yourself a backup and draft or go for an undrafted free agent guy late in the draft this year, or like I said, undrafted, and see if you can develop him into the next Tyson Bagent that you feel comfortable as your backup quarterback behind Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I think a conditional draft pick is the thing that makes the most sense for both sides, right? It protects the Bears from, well, you give him up and he goes on and is great somewhere else. Well, you didn't get fair compensation, but if it protects the other team to say, hey, well, we don't want to give you a second round pick until we see what he is. So if you can kind of set those stages of, like, depending on how good he is, it increases what the Bears end up getting. I think that makes the most sense for both sides. And I think as far as trade, probability, I think Tyson Bagent will eventually depart the Bears via trade. It's just a question of whether it's now or next year. Like, I think it's a similar conversation to Javon Dexter, where it's like the guy's going to leave when his contract is up anyway. Like, you're not keeping him beyond, but he's under contract through 2027, so you don't have to do it now. It's just a question of when do you think his value is going to be the highest, and if a team gives you a good offer, you'll take it now. And if teams aren't really quite buying in yet, then that's fine. Have them do another strong preseason and see if a team has a quarterback injury during training camp or the regular season, and then they're more desperate. Then, like, the Bears are going to be eager to move him, but I think they're going to say, hey, there's no reason to hold on to him all the way through the end of his contract, so we'll just wait patiently for the right deal to come forward.
Yeah, with Adam, if they move Bagent, is Keenum enough as that veteran, and then a late round pick or an undrafted guy, or do you have to upgrade more at someone who's just like a little bit younger than Case Keenum, because he's really kind of a coach in the room? Like, I joked around the other day, like Jameis Winston. Like, would Case and a late round pick be enough, or do you have to still find a more of an upgrade than Keenum?
I mean, I can't really answer that because I haven't seen Case Keenum on the practice field. I haven't really got to see how he is throwing the ball right now. So, I mean, I guess I would say if Ben's comfortable with him, I'm comfortable with him. Caleb, hasn't missed a game yet in his career, so he seems very durable. Yes, of course, you want that guy that can come in, like, say, Davis Mills, who gave the Texans a 3-0 stretch there when he came in, kept them in the playoff hunt, and then CJ Stroud came back in. So you want that guy, but if you're the Bears and you're kind of pinching pennies here to kind of get the players you want to add to your defense, Case Keenum on the cheap plus a undrafted guy keeps that room cheap for the moment until Caleb gets paid. So, I mean, if Ben's okay with Keenum, then yeah, I'm good with it.
Yeah, I feel pretty similarly there. Like, I'm not so worried about, like, do you have to have the world's best backup quarterback? Because the famous quote from the Colts coach when Peyton Manning was there, they never had a good backup. And it's like, well, why don't you give the backup any reps? Because if 18's not out there, we're effed, and we don't practice effed. Like, if Caleb's not out there, the Bears are effed, and you don't practice F. So, like, yeah, it's nice to have a guy who can get you by for a game or two, but even if you lose a game or two, it's not going to derail your whole season. Whereas if he's out for an extended period of time, you're screwed anyway, and we'll just climb up right off the season anyway. So, like, I don't feel this huge urge to have, if Bagent's one of the top 32 quarterback, like, that's great to have, but it's not like, oh, I gotta have it just in case. And so I think from my perspective, I want to see the Bears have someone developing there, right? Like, not just Case Keenum. Like, see if Ben Johnson can be a little bit of that Kevin O'Connell, like, quarterbacks come here and then rehab a little bit and then get you great value. I mean, they've been able to develop Bagent somewhat across this time. And so, whether it's a late round draft pick or, you look in free agency and you take a chance on, a Zach Wilson or a Trey Lance or somebody just to kick the tires and say, they're probably not any good, but can Ben Johnson fix them and be one of these quarterback fixers? Like, I want to be using that backup quarterback spot as a developmental role that you can try and take a depreciated asset and then flip it for more than you gave up to get it, like Tyson Bagent potentially.
And the last report here that's really been coming out is Jordan Schultz also had that, as we've talked about the idea of trading DJ Moore more from the perspective of saving the Bears money, using him in a Max Crosby deal, using him just to get draft capital. But Jordan Schultz reported that the Bears are getting calls on DJ Moore. So, Adam, from your perspective, what are you looking for? If a GM's calling you and they're saying, hey, we want DJ Moore, like, what's it take for you to be willing to part with him? Is it a player? Is it a certain draft pick? Like, well, what does it take for you to say, yes, we would trade DJ Moore from this team?
I mean, I think for the Bears' needs and where they're at now, if I'm trading DJ Moore, give me like a third round pick, a late day 2 pick, I think is where I'm looking. If it's early day 4, I'm okay with that. I'm good adding draft capital because that gives Poles and company more swings at the draft. Plus, it's adding cheaper players in where you can, hopefully go bring back Kevin Byard, go get yourself a defensive end if there's a guy you like, or a second safety if you want to go free agency that way. So there's definitely, plus you're going to have to spend money to fill that third wide receiver role, because I don't feel like that guy's there in the wide receiver room at the moment. But I think if you're just getting me some good draft capital, then I'm okay with DJ Moore going.
I'd like the threshold to be a little bit higher. I mean, obviously, you always want give me the most I can, but I feel like having that third receiver be that good is very valuable for the Bears. And so, I would want the trade compensation to leave me feeling like my team is improving, right? Not just we're shedding salary to create some room, and maybe that improvement comes from, you just get a bunch of salary cap space and then you're able to sign a free agent. But I at least want there to be a direction and a plan of okay, this trade actively makes the team better, not just we'll figure it out later. So I mean, I don't get the impression that the Bears are eager to move on. They more just realize, hey, he is a little bit expendable and has some value, so let's at least get to see what the options might present there at that point. But I don't know that they're just going to take whatever draft pick somebody comes offering. I think Ryan Poles is looking at this more hey, can we flip him for a player? Can we do some kind of something that's going to elevate the team as a whole, even while you subtract a wide receiver?
Lauren, I'm just curious, just in general, when you're hearing the Bears be talked about at the combine, what's just kind of the buzz? Is it these rumors? Is it the talk of Caleb Williams? What is the kind of discussion around the Chicago Bears at the combine right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of the trade discussion stuff is very localized to the Bears, right? That's all the Bears media is talking about around here. But when you talk to people that work for other teams or cover other teams, it's much more Caleb Williams' development and how the kind of progress they made. Wow, you got things figured out with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, huh? There's oh, you welcome to the big boy table. You belong all of a sudden, huh? This, I think there's a real feeling yes, they had some luck and some variance stuff, but that this wasn't a fluke. It is real. Maybe not that they're gonna win the division every year and win playoff games every year, but that the foundation is very real here. And now you go from trying to catch up and get in the quarterback head coach game to now trying to catch up and oh, now you're at the contending game, and it's a different stage of the team building process, and kind of a different ball game here. You're kind of in the echelon of oh, we're the teams that don't have to pay attention to these quarterbacks at the podium here, because we're settled. It's oh, welcome to the elite club, a little bit of, you've got the important stuff figured out, so now let's all see how you can handle kind of the little stuff around it.
Adam, we were talking.
I think it's interesting real fast that, like you just said, we don't, for the second year in a row, we don't have to worry about the quarterback room. And we can kind of take what Ryan Poles is saying, what Ben Johnson's saying, and try, last year, not a lot of people had Colston Loveland. A lot of people had Tyler Warren, and then it kind of seemed like Loveland got in there late, but we can kind of listen to what they're saying and kind of come up with our own, instead of just being yeah, 1-1's Caleb, and then we were trying to figure out Rome. And I think we knew wide receiver was a need then. So I think this year makes it different that, now coming off the winning season, going to, the playoffs, how do they want to fix this team? And it just seems like defense, and more defense.
100%.
As it should be, because that's what they need the most is defense, and more defense. But speaking of that, if you look at any mock draft right now, Caden McDonald seems to be the star of the show for the Chicago Bears. When you look at pick 25, he seems to be the guy that's mocked there every single time. What are the options? We'll get Adam Lauren's view on McDonald and just who else could be there. But it really feels like the national media is locked in on Caden McDonald as the guy for the Bears at 25. We'll discuss that next year on the Bears Squad Show.
This episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. Like while I was down here in Indianapolis, I had a chance to go to Pacers game on Tuesday. They're terrible, but got to see the 76ers as well and Embiid. And like, I wouldn't bet on them in the necessarily the long-term future. But if you're looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in, because not only can your pick cash and you win big, but it could also send you to the NBA Finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win that trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
All right, guys. So Caden McDonald seems to be, the guy that people are locked in on when you look at mock drafts. I'm just, Adam, I'll start with you here. Just how you feel when you see all these, you mentioned there in that last segment, like when it was 1-1, it's Caleb. And now it still feels like in a weird way the Bears are in the same spot. We know that's probably not reality, that, Caden McDonald's going to be there on the board, and it's this obvious pick for the Bears at 25. But how do you view him as a player? And if, as everyone's, trending towards the Bears right now, do you feel like that'd be a good pick for the Bears?
I mean, as things stand right now, yeah, it'd be a good pick because Gervon Dexter is still a Chicago Bear, because Grady Jarrett's still there, because Shamar Turner, who, like I said, it's kind of moving all around. See what they do with him. Yeah, you need that run-stuffing defensive tackle. But if Gervon Dexter were to move on in a trade, I mean, there's plenty of other guys in this same position in terms of just defensive tackle. Peter Woods from Clemson. Don't know that he'll be there, but we've seen some mocks have him dropping that low. Lee Hunter, the big boy from Texas Tech, if you're looking for one of those run stuffers. But the guy we've talked about before, Caleb Banks, he walked out there and measured in at over 6'6", 327 pounds, 35-inch arms. Oh, and then he went out and performed in the drills and was one of the most athletic defensive tackles as well. Injuries are his problem, so he hasn't put a lot on tape, especially this past season. So that's the scare with him. But if you're just looking for a prototypical defensive coordinator's name, blanking on it.
Dennis Allen.
Yes, Dennis Allen. There you go. Dennis Allen type guy at defensive tackle. It's Caleb Banks. He wants the tall, he wants the rangy, but athletic guy that can both, like you said, Gervon Dexter's not really great at rushing the passer, not really great against the run. Well, Caleb Banks, when it's all put together, he can do both. And I think that's a guy that I look at with the size and everything, just makes a ton of sense for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I've been feeling more and more like Caden McDonald makes less and less sense for the Chicago Bears as this going on. I mean, and it doesn't help that, at the combine yesterday, he looked pretty slow and pretty stiff and pretty fat too. Like just like not in, there's a lot of excess body weight, but big nose tackle. It's part of the process there. But yeah, I really think if Dennis Allen could have his druthers, Peter Woods from Clemson is like the dream for him there. I don't think he's going to make it all the way down to 25. But
I don't think so anymore either.
Yeah, but that kind of like, I know that the production hasn't been super high there with the sacks, but just in terms of like the quick get off, the explosiveness, like he fits in that mold of some of the guys he drafted for that position in New Orleans a number of times. But yeah, I'm less convinced he's going to go super big bodied nose tackle. I think it was Butkus Stats on Twitter. His name's Quinton. I think he tweeted out that Dennis Allen has never drafted a defensive tackle who weighs more than 300 pounds before the 6th round in his entire time in New Orleans. At the first round pick, Brian Bresee from Clemson, was exactly 300 pounds. That's the heaviest defensive tackle he has drafted before the 6th round. But Onyemata was a 4th round pick, and Sheldon Rankins was a 1st round pick. Those guys were all under 300. And understanding that that's probably not the exact threshold, because defensive tackles are bigger, faster, stronger now than they were even 5 years ago. So like, I don't think the Bears are going to have a line on their draft board that says, oh, if he's over 300 pounds, they're not going to take him. But I don't think he's going to take like the aggressively large player like Caden McDonald. That's humongous, and that's part of the trait. But like, I think he wants more speed. Ryan Poles talked about defense being faster, and McDonald doesn't necessarily bring you that.
Yeah, I was talking with Lance Erline, who works with NFL.com. He's going to join us in a couple weeks on the show, and he does player profiles for every single guy. And I was reading the Caden McDonald one, and I was like, man, this is not. It doesn't inspire me. He talks about how it's yes, he's good in the run, but he's not great at getting to the quarterback. He's a little slow, so there's not like a quick shedding the center to even get through. So how does that translate to the NFL? Like, just it kind of sounds like this slow prodding player who yes can make an impact, but the more I see McDonald, the less I feel excited about it. And I'm with you guys. Peter Woods, Feels like he's going to be gone. I mean, I think there's going to be a huge rush on defensive linemen in this draft. It feels like it's one of the deepest positions in this group. Maybe it's not at the elite level like it has been in past years, but there's a lot of guys either on the edge or on the interior that people like. And then, I'm a big Caleb Banks fan. He's my number one target personally that I would love to see the Bears take. But Adam, if they weren't to go inside, they're going to go, keep Dexter. You have Jarrett. You have this roster put together. If they go, okay, we need to add someone opposite of Sweat. As you look at what's happened at the combine so far and the numbers and just how you view these players, who are some guys that stand out to you right now as all this is going on as an edge option for the Bears?
More with where mock drafts are and where people kind of have guys ranked at the moment. I'm looking more at my second round pick as the guy where I'm looking at, Derek Moore from Michigan. I'm a Michigan fan. He came in at over 6'4.5". That kind of shocked me. I thought he was smaller, shorter, and I never really considered him as a guy the Bears would look at because of Dennis Allen. Him being that size, and he was over, I want to say 200, I want to say 264. He's a guy that I think fits. Zion Young from Missouri, who some have in the late first, some have in the late second. He's another guy. And then the guy who, blew up the combine with all his, how fast he can run and everything was Dennis Sutton from Penn State, Danny Dennis Dutton. So he's 6'5", almost 6'6", 265 pounds, ran well, moved well. His RAS score that I was talking to you, Joe, about before is 999. So, I mean, he comes out and he's very athletic. He's a pass rushing type. And someone else tweeted it, a Bears fan, I can't remember who it was, said you can never go wrong drafting Penn State pass rushers. And I mean, if you can get him at 57, I'm good with that as well. So there's plenty of guys, I think, in that 57 range for defensive end or edge rusher that make a ton of sense for Dennis Allen and a ton of sense for the Chicago Bears.
It does feel like they're kind of in this no man's land for edge rushers in the first round, right? Where it's like, I mean, unless somebody like Mesidor makes it all the way to 25, but I don't think that's going to happen at this point. Like, feels like Bain, Bailey, obviously Arvell used to be kind of as an edge rusher. Guys like Falk and Cassius Howell, like they're all off the board for sure. Mesidor probably as well. And like TJ Parker maybe in that range. Zion Young. I mean, it starts to feel a little bit early. Like you're kind of just in this no man's land of like trade up or trade down if you really want to make edge the priority there. It does feel like you'll have more options at defensive tackle or potentially safety or maybe even linebacker. But I do expect defense is going to be the priority there. But they are going to go best player available. It's just hard to envision them using it on an offensive player.
Real quick, I want to ask you, what was the talk around the combine with Bain and Howell, who came in? I know arm length is the big thing now. They came in sub 31, and there's only, I think, I wish I would have saved the tweet. There's only been 2 edge rushers drafted in the top 60 that had sub 31 arms, and neither one of them are any good. So that's where I'm wondering if there's any talk about those 2 at the combine with the short arms.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more confidence in Bain in that regard, saying, "Oh well, like we're gonna do his arms are short, kind of who cares?" Like it's not a non-factor, but I don't think people are overreacting too aggressively there. And already we've got Adam Schefter doing the damage control tweet clearly from an agent saying, well, the combine, some arms actually measured longer. Some teams measured his arms longer than that. It just depends on who's doing the measurement. So like, it's one of those things that, we went through this discourse last year with Will Campbell and he still got drafted, was it 5th or top 10 in that draft? So like, I think it's going to be a talking point for a lot of the offseason, but I think teams are going to look, especially for Bain, like, his upper body strength, his power, to just like the length isn't that big of an issue, especially the pass rush moves he used, right? He's never been a length rusher, and he creates, that separation from blockers easy enough. Like, so I don't think it's that big of a concern. I haven't heard as much on Howell just because I think, there's been a bunch of other names in this defensive line group that people are talking about that he kind of just, it's like, oh yeah, his arms are short and he kind of gets crapped on a little bit, but let's move on to the other guys that we're talking about,
Yeah.
It's funny. It feels like because there's no quarterbacks in this group really outside of Mendoza and maybe Ty Simpson sneaking into the first round, that arm length has become the new hand size. That's just, it's the buzzword. It feels like it. And Will Campbell having a tough Super Bowl definitely adds to that. It's always kind of a timing thing of what it's going to be, but because Mendoza has no hand size questions, everyone's just focused on arm length, Adam, and what's it going to be and how's it measure up?
Yeah, it's weird. I was trying to pull up Will Combine, see what his arms came in at. Yeah, 32 and 5/8 at last year's combine. So I think it's more prevalent for offensive linemen when we are talking arm length, because you want that reach to be able to get your punch in, especially as an offensive tackle. And that's where Campbell just doesn't have it. You'd like a guy 34, or, the freakish ones have 35 plus length arms. So I really look at it not as big of a factor for defensive linemen, but yeah, if you can get a guy that's 6'5" and has 35-inch arms and, has all the pass rush moves, you think that's a first round lock. But then you look at Danny Dennis Sutton from Penn State. He has that kind of length and everything. Maybe the moves aren't as defined as, say, a Messidor or Bain or even Keldrick Falk, but I think that he's a guy I look at. So yeah, arm length doesn't bother me near as much on the defensive side as it does the offensive line side.
One thing I just want to hit on here before we go to break, just as we're talking so much defense and the Bears, I'm just curious your guys' reaction when you saw the not supposed to be leaked, but then leaked player report cards that came out, and Dennis Allen got a C+ from the Bears. Does it, Lauren, raise any red flags, or you're just like, it just wasn't a great year on defense, and we'll see what it looks like next year?
Yeah, I think I think it's natural to draw some lines there. I think we should draw some lines there between he gets C+, and they're very interested in turning over a lot of the starters on this defense. Like that, I think that's natural there, where it's like, I think Dennis Allen is working through this saying, a lot of these guys aren't my guy. And there's not that he's intentionally like treating them poorly, but I think just over the course of the season, he's like, all right, Javon, we're just going to make it work. But maybe, I don't know that they specifically, but that kind of idea is like, all right, Tremaine, like, you're our guy, so we got to make it work. But you and me both know this ain't going to last much longer. So I'm not overly worried about it. I think you're going to get more guys. Dennis Allen's always been like kind of particular about the types of players he wants. I think you're going to see more of those guys come in, and I think that grade probably goes up next year as a result.
Yeah, a lot of these guys are Matt Eberflus guys, and the coaching styles are completely different. So, if you're a Matt Eberflus fan, and his, he doesn't seem to ever get fired. He doesn't ever, and we know from past years in New Orleans and everything with Dennis Allen, he will get on you hardcore. And if you're a younger player that came up with Matt Eberflus, you may not like that. And yeah, you're grading them, especially if you're a Javon Dexter or someone that's being talked about, Jaquan Brisker, who it doesn't even seem like it's in the realm of possibility he's coming back to the Bears. He might have graded him as an F. Javon Dexter being talked about trading, he might have graded him as an F. So, I just think it's just the clash of styles between the Eberflus guys and having to be coached under Dennis Allen and company.
All right, we focused a lot on the first round so far, but who are your your day 2 targets, your round 2, round 3 crushes that you got right now that you're hoping maybe fall to the Chicago Bears? We'll get to that next year on the Bears Squad Show. Today's episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy Draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set. The flavors are ready. I've got my number 1 pick for the 5 Hour Energy Draft. I go with the strawberry banana. Tropical delight with strawberry. A taste that goes in everything from smoothies and milkshakes to cakes and ice cream. And I'm kind of the same way. I like strawberry banana pretty much everything. So it's part of the reason why it is my number 1 go-to for there. But it is it's that reminiscent of a fruit smoothie shake. 5 Hour Energy gives you the boost with 0 sugar. And also right now, they got a bunch of new flavors on the way, and they're always taking ideas too. So if you like something, you can find a way to send your mentions, your limited time flavor options like the Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy that 5 Hour Energy has going right now. Find your new favorite flavor of 5 Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. All right, I'll start with this one. I don't think this guy's going to be there for the Bears when they pick in the second round, but you have the Edmunds conversation happening. It's what's the health of Edwards? What's the health of Sewell going into next season? It feels like linebacker is a must as much as safety is because, there's no safeties on the roster. I love Jacob Rodriguez. I love everything about Jacob Rodriguez. Like the combine numbers are good yesterday from running. Was like 4.67, I think it was. For him, he runs well, he performs well, They are all season long, turnover machine. Like, I just loved watching him play at Texas Tech. And it feels like there's going to be a lot of Tech guys drafted this year in the first 2 rounds. But Adam, Jacob Rodriguez is my big time draft crush right now for the Bears.
Yeah, I can see why a lot of fans would love him, what he did at Texas Tech and being on one of the best defenses in the country, what they were able to do, get to the playoff and everything. I don't want to say I'm not a fan. I'm a fan of him. I don't know how he fits, he's barely just over 6 foot. I don't know how he fits in that. Yeah. And that's a problem with a lot of these linebackers. Dennis Allen likes taller, rangy linebackers. And a lot of these linebackers don't fit that mold. So I'm curious to see how they do free agency and what they decide at the linebacker position. But I'll give you a linebacker that I literally just wrote down that I love and fits. It's Jake Golday from Cincinnati. He's over 6'4", long, rangy guy, makes plays in the passing game. So I think that he would fit that role, but he'll also come up and thump you if you needs to. So I really like him as probably, if it's more of a 3rd round pick, and we'll see, where the picks all land come draft time, but where they sit now, if he was your 3rd round pick, I'd be very happy. And I'm noticing as I look at mock drafts, I think about who I would want. I am like just completely taking offense out of my mind when I'm looking at, if I'm like, 3rd round, give me this guy, 2nd round, this falls here, and it just falls the way I would like it to. I'm okay taking defense like the first 5 rounds and just living with it and letting Ben Johnson and company figure it out, because there's still plenty of talent on that side of the ball on the offensive side.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I wonder with especially some of these faster athletic linebackers, if there's not, I don't want to say like a run on the position, but like because you're going to have Arvell Reese and Sonny from Ohio State at the top, Sonny Styles, like they're going to both go potentially top 10. At least Reese will be top 5, Sonny probably the top 10. If that doesn't sort of like pull everybody else up, because now all of a sudden like there's real depth in that linebacker class, and all of a sudden an athletic linebacker like Rodriguez, like who might be initially more like a 3rd round type of guy, ends up going like closer to early 2nd, and like Golday starts going higher, and Anthony Hill starts going higher, CJ Allen starts going higher, and all of a sudden the team that wanted a linebacker thought somebody might fall to them, and now we got to make sure we get our guy. So I do worry about you can't wait too long, or else I wonder if those guys are just going to start kind of coming off the board, especially because it feels like it's been a couple of years since we've had a linebacker class with some real value at the top here. Like I think back to last year, like you had Jahad Campbell and Carson Schwessinger from the Browns at the beginning of the 2nd round there, but like there wasn't really, outside of the pass rusher hybrid guy that went to the Jalen Walker that went to the Falcons, where you're like, okay, he could do a little bit of everything. Like there wasn't that kind of off-ball linebacker class to kind of rejuvenate the young depth in the NFL. And so I think now teams look at this saying, oh, well, we should grab one of these guys while it's a good deep class, at least at the top, to rejuvenate our defense. So then, well, you're better off going to another position that doesn't get as thin as quickly.
I'm curious to see how it continues to trend, because the Lions took the kid from Iowa, a couple years back. Yes, Campbell, when they took Jahmyr Gibbs in that same 1st round. But it just feels like the linebacker position is kind of just being pushed down the kind of where running back is. It's like we can find linebackers, but even the safety is starting to, they're starting to become the quarterbacks, where it was always the middle linebacker was the guy that ran the defense. The safeties are being asked to do a lot more. So I find it interesting, because even when you talk about, Reese, who played off ball, Styles, who played off ball, but they also rush the passer a lot. And I mean, I saw a stat yesterday that kind of shocked me. I mean, I watched a lot of Ohio State football. Reese became known as kind of more of an edge, more of a pass rusher. But if you look at their overall stats in their Ohio State career, Sonny Styles has one more snap where he played edge rusher, and actually had damn near the same stats as Arvell Reese. So I think that's why you're starting to see teams think like, okay, yeah, I can take him and I might just be able to play him at edge, and maybe nobody sees it, but I think he's a top 5 player in this class in Sonny Styles, and I can get him maybe at 10 or 11 or 12, and I'm getting a good pass rusher. So I think the position itself at linebacker is, I'm kind of just waiting to see how this trend continues, because like you said, there's a lot of fast guys in this draft, shorter, smaller, fast guys, and that's what we're seeing at the college level too. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the NFL continues this trend when it comes to the off-ball linebackers.
Lauren, before we get to one of the guys you like, maybe in the second or third round, I guess I want to stick with this linebacker conversation for a second. If let's say the guys you really like in the interior and even the edge rushers, it's too early for them. Is off-ball linebacker something, Lauren, you would consider at 25, or do you feel like that's not where I just want to be drafting a linebacker in general?
I'm not opposed to it as a concept, but I also feel it's a little bit of that, again, like sweet spot conversation where, like, the recent and styles of the world and maybe even CJ Allen go before the Bears, but then is 25 too early for, Anthony Hill or Jake Golday or some of these other guys in the class. Like, certainly like with a trade up or a trade down. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to trade up for a linebacker, but nonetheless, if you moved spots, like, it doesn't feel like quite the sweet spot for a linebacker. But there's also a lot of time between now and draft day for things to move around a little bit and see how that shakes out. It's hard. I don't want to be too definitive on February 27th of like, oh well, this player is definitely not going to be there, and this player for sure is going to be there, because who knows at this point.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth saying that if we, depending on what happens in free agency, but if the Bears feel like they filled a lot of holes and just want younger, cheaper players, we could see a trade back into the early second, and maybe they don't pick on that first day. If someone, maybe Ty Simpson falls and one of those teams likes him enough to trade from 35, 36 to 25 and give up some extra draft capital, this year and next year, maybe it'd be worth it to the Bears to say, okay, that gives us some more players that are going to be cheaper that we think can, if there's, say, these defensive tackles we're talking about, there's a group of them in that early second round that I think will be there, even if it's a run stuffing or a 3 technique, that I think you could trade back into that and still get a guy that you really like, that you have at least graded closer to Caden McDonald or, a Caleb Banks than, forcing a pick of a off-ball linebacker or something like that at 25.
One thing to keep in mind there too, bigger picture throughout this draft process. Ryan Poles was on Todd McShay's podcast this week, and would highly recommend listening to that interview. He talked about how he gets all the scouts together before the combine, and they go through all the players and start to set like a preliminary draft board. He said this is the smallest draft board he has set in the last 5 years. He does not. He was asked, does that mean you don't think this class is very deep? And he's like, correct. Like, this is just not a draft that they feel like there's a ton of depth in that. So to me, I would be surprised if he's eager to trade down to get more draft picks this year. I understand, you trade down if just there's no one on the board, or there's a guy you think you've done for. I'm not saying he's not going to at all, but this is not going to be a year where he's trying to accumulate more picks in this draft. So I'm curious how that shapes their board, and if that makes them more willing to trade up and say, screw it, we'll give you our 4th round pick to move up a few spots in the second round, because we don't think there's going to be that many good guys there in the 4th round anyway. And same with the 2 7th round picks. It would not surprise me if you move up 2 spots in the 3rd round and give up those 7th, because don't really need them anyway. So I'm curious how aggressive he gets, or how he starts to value the number of picks in this class. I mean, I'd love if you could trade down and then get a future draft pick for next year.
Well,
that I think would be the ideal thing there.
Well, and a lot of people are saying next year's class is supposed to be very deep, but NIL changes things, so you don't know who all comes out, but it's supposed to be much better next year, especially when you just look at the quarterback class, which always means players are falling down the board to you that you would like, because people, teams that need quarterbacks are taking quarterbacks higher in the draft. There's just not those guys this year. So yeah, future draft capital would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, if Dante Moore and Arch Manning and Lenora Sellers and maybe CJ Carr and you never know with DJ Lagway,
yeah.
Who? Oh yeah,
Trinidad Chambliss. Yeah.
Yeah. Which guys? I'll be honest. I still don't get how Chase Daniels he'd be the second quarterback in this class. He's playing at Ole Miss next year. I don't get why some people are evaluated that high, but he's going back to college. I don't understand it. But yeah, it feels. Yeah, I know the money's going to be good. I mean,
I don't.
It's that's why Ty Simpson has to have a promise from someone. If he got offered $6.5 million from Miami, Sean McVay or someone had to tell him, hey, you're going to sit for a year behind Matt Stafford and you're going to be the Rams quarterback the following year and for the foreseeable future. But it's next year's class definitely feels a lot better. But Lauren, is there anyone for you later in the 2nd or 3rd round that you're keeping an eye on right now?
Yeah, a couple of guys that jump out to me. One, the safety from USC, Kamari Ramsey. I think that's the kind of player that Dennis Allen can move around all over. He's a little bit more like a slot box guy. I don't know that he just wasn't used a ton as a free safety. I mean, he did some, but I think just enough that, okay, you can get by with him and play too deep when you need to, but then to make him that ultimate chess piece to move around the secondary, especially when you have him and Kyler Gordon, and all of a sudden, these are like, it becomes like positionless basketball, but positionless football, where like your slots are outside, your outsides are in the slot, and they're at safety, and then they're up, and because that was one of the things I heard an interview with somebody, and now I don't remember who it was, talking about what made Seattle's defense so good. It was a quarterback. It was Kirk Cousins did an interview, and he said like the new thing that Mike McDonald is doing with the safeties is like when they're rotating from too deep to like cover one, like they're waiting super, super long into the play. So the quarterback thinks it's too deep pre-snap and then snaps the ball and they're still in too deep. And then the last second they rotate down to go single deep. And then like the quarterback not seeing that as it's happening live. And when you have a player like versatile players like this that can kind of go all over, then all of a sudden you can hold as long as possible and try and like stay one step ahead of the offense. So I think someone like that would make a lot of sense. And then there's a smaller school defensive tackle who I think is going to start. His name is going to come up a little bit more because he had a really strong combine. Caleb Proctor from Southeast Louisiana. Like right now, is third round a little early for him, maybe, but like I wonder if he's not playing himself into strong day 2 consideration here because he's that like super quick off the line of scrimmage, explosive pass rusher. Like I could see Dennis Allen really liking him on the interior.
I would love Ramsey. I have Jalen Kilgore from South Carolina, kind of for the same reason you have Ramsey too. I like both those guys because they're so versatile. Whereas Kilgore is more of a box type guy where he can come down. He's played some linebacker. He played some safety. He did play some nickel. So he's done a little bit of that. Whereas Ramsey's more of the defensive back. He can play everywhere and you feel comfortable with that. So 2 different styles there in guys, but very versatile. And that's why I like both those guys, Kilgore and Ramsey in the backfield.
All right, let's take our last break here. When we get back, let's discuss ESPN put out a story, 15 trade candidates that guys who could get moved this offseason. Obviously, Max Crosby is on that list, but there's at least one other player that caught my eye. If there's anyone maybe we're keeping an eye on this offseason who we think could get traded, we'll get to that next year on the Bears Squad Show. All right, guys. So ESPN puts out the story, and look, it's rumor season. So a lot of this is when I see these, they always catch my attention a little bit more at this time because okay, maybe there's some reporting that's being snuck in here, a little bit of guys we're hearing that might be getting talked about a little bit more, and at the combine, Max Crosby's name comes up. I do want to start there though, just Lauren. What's the vibe around the combine? Because everyone's talking about Max Crosby. Is he going to get moved? It's him and AJ Brown are the top discussion points. But what's it feel like to you about what you're hearing around Max Crosby and how people are talking about it?
Yeah, it feels very like Raiders are trying to take control over the narrative, right? Of like the Raiders are saying, we don't want to move him. We expect he will be here. Like we need good football players. He's a good football player. Leave us alone or give us an offer we can't refuse, but more or less leave us alone. Like Spytex, the GM said they'd be open to trading the number 1 overall pick if someone gave him a great offer. Like I think they look at Crosby the same way. Like, yeah, they're not gonna trade the number 1 overall pick, but if you traded them, Matthew Stafford and 3 first-round picks, maybe they list, so, and I think the same thing is going to be true for Crosby, where like they want the narrative to be, we're not trading them unless you blow us away. But like, that's always been their standpoint. Like they've never said we want to trade Max Crosby. The whole conversation is always Max Crosby doesn't want to be here. And we just haven't heard from Max Crosby or heard anything from Max Crosby's side really throughout this process. I think the Raiders are trying to like pull back the narrative to saying, no, he's staying, we want him here, as opposed to Crosby was always the one who seemingly wanted out. And it's always been up to Crosby to create the mess and hold out and demand a trade for him to actually get moved anyway. So I don't know that we've learned anything. I think we've just sort of recalibrated the narrative to say it's on Crosby to decide, does he want to be in with the Raiders or does he want to raise enough of the stink to force his way out of there? And we shall see.
Lauren, I know you live in Wisconsin. It feels very Giannis adjacent to me right now, where like the Raiders are like, no, but Max is going to have to be the bad guy, just like Giannis is going to have to be the bad guy for the Milwaukee Bucks to actually make that move. I feel like we're seeing almost the exact same storyline play out. I mean, it's a fan favorite. I get why he wouldn't want to, why fans would be upset if Max Crosby got moved. But yeah, that's how I feel too, where it just feels like the Raiders don't want to move him unless they get blown away, or if Max Crosby says, I don't want to be here, it's time to move me. And then they're still going to ask for an arm and a leg to make a deal. But so there's two other names on this list that stood out to me. I'll start with the pass rusher. I can get your guys' thoughts here. Kayvon Thibodeau is the guy that's been brought up on this list. Now, the Giants have heavily invested in pass rush. Feels like they're not going to be able to pay all of them, right? You have Dexter Lawrence, you have Abdul Carter, you have Kayvon Thibodeau. Adam, is that someone that intrigues you at all? Obviously, price point is dependent, but how do you feel about the player and if that's a fit for what you think of him as a Chicago Bear?
I think the fit is fine. I think you would obviously take him. Now, the price, I think, is going to be the problem here. And is he going into his fifth-year option? I'm trying to remember off the top
He's
of my
got
head.
one more year.
He's got one more year. So you're going to have to pay him on top of it. So I just look at it as, he's at worst, you'd have to give up 57 to get him, I think. Now, could you use DJ Moore in a Kayvon Thibodeau trade? Yeah, I think so. I think that would, they're looking for weapons for the young quarterback. So I think that that could bridge that gap in terms of draft pick capital it would take to get Kayvon Thibodeau. But I just don't know how much money they really have to go sign a premier pass rusher to a monster contract that he's going to take. Now, yeah, he's not going to be top of the market guy, but he's still going to be in that probably lower second tier of a lot of money being paid. And now you have, a lot of money locked up between him and Montez Sweat. So I don't see him as a realistic fit, while I think he'd be a great fit for the defense.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I do think from a money standpoint, like Ryan Poles could look at this and say, okay, you trade for Thibodeau and then you give him the extension, and the extension money doesn't kick in until 27. And then 27 offseason, you could cut Dio Dengbo and clear some cap space. You can cut Grady Jarrett and clear some cap. I mean, there's always money to move around. But even on the defensive line, I think some of your bigger expenses can come up in time for that deal before it would kick in, as opposed to
that is true.
As opposed to signing Trey Hendrickson now or trading for Max Crosby now, where it's like it's going to cost you the money today. Like Thibodeau's like $15 million, I think, on his fifth-year option this year. So like that's temporarily affordable, but I don't like the idea of trading for him and having to give him the big deal right away before we like see it one more time. Like he had 11.5 sacks a couple seasons ago, but he's been hurt the last couple of years. He's been down in the rotation a little bit as well. So like I kind of would like the idea of him to prove it a little bit. And I don't necessarily love giving up a second round pick or whatever to get a guy that has to prove it along the way. But I don't expect Ryan Poles to make the big splash at defensive end this offseason. When he talked, he did 2 media sessions down here. He did like the one at the podium, and then he did like a local media session that wasn't live streamed. And he talked about how, a lot of confidence in Dio Dengbo coming back, and they see Shamar Turner as a part of that edge rusher rotation. That he was, he said, at the end there, he was finally settling in at edge rusher, and we think that's where we like him. That they want both those guys to play end, but kick inside a defensive tackle. And so if we're going in the offseason saying you've got Sweat, Dengbo, Turner, and Austin Booker all on your edge rusher depth chart, like it's not to say that they're not going to. I think they're still going to add something there. But I don't think they're going to see that as the position that they have to make the big splash. I think they're going to look at this and say Grady Jarrett might be the only defensive tackle under contract right now. Like that's the spot that I would expect more of an investment. But the free agent class is light, and the Giants aren't going to trade Dexter Lawrence, it sounds like. So there's not like a great trade defensive tackle option out there. I mean, Deron Payne from the Commanders, maybe. I mean, I don't know. So the point being, I'm not getting my hopes up for a splash defensive end, a low-level free agent to add the rotation, maybe, but they want versatile guys that can kick inside for sure.
If they think a Dangbo's coming back healthy, I would rather spend that 57th pick on a Derek Moore, or Dennis Sutton, or Zion Young if he's there. I mean, there's other edge rushers as well. Just to add to that group, they sit behind and learn for a year and just become part of the rotation. And then as a Dangbo walks out the door, you hope they step right into that spot. And then you still have Austin Booker with great depth. And then you can add another younger guy. And that's how you build especially when you have that quarterback contract coming up, when you're going to have to pay 2 wide receivers in a couple years that are going to probably command some good money. So I really think that the draft is where you look at, and I'm with Lauren. I guess it's more, I'm hoping he doesn't go out and make this huge splash. Keep building for the future and let Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams lead you to the playoffs year after year.
No, this next guy,
oh, God.
I was going
to say, I worry that he's too confident in those guys coming back from injury. Like he made it sound like training camp for sure. Like he's like they'll be back either this spring or training camp at the very latest. I'm like, he tore his Achilles in like October. Like I get like it's wishful
Ridiculous.
thinking, sure, but like and even when they do come back, like like they weren't that good before the injury, and now they're coming off these serious injuries. Like, I just hope he doesn't look at this and say, well, we never got a fair shot to see how this was going to work last year, so let's try it again the exact same way at defensive end, because like it's not, and I don't think he can do purely that, but I think that might be the position they're more willing to cheap out on a little bit and say, well, we got to get safeties, we got to get linebackers, and we got to get defensive tackles. So sorry, defensive end, like you're going to get a Dominique Robinson replacement, and that's about it.
This list honestly could have been who are the Miami Dolphins going to trade, because they're pretty much half of it. Like Tua, Waddle, H-Hands on here. But the one I was intrigued by, just more on the idea of if you whiff on, I agree with what you guys said earlier about Brisker not coming back. If Byard were to get out of your price range that you felt comfortable with, they have Minkah Fitzpatrick on here as an option. He's owed $12 million next season. I can't imagine he would command a huge amount of draft capital in a trade at this point. So he was someone I was just like, I think that could be a good fit for the Bears this offseason. Someone you could acquire through trade to help add to that safety room. So maybe it's draft someone and bring in a Minkah if a buyer ends up not being an option. Adam, I know you got a lot of family who are Dolphins fans, so you watch a lot of Dolphins games as well. So how do you what do you see from Minkah, and how much of a good player is left there, and if that's a fit?
I mean, I guess it's a fit. It would obviously depend on cost. If it's just a late round, even swap or something along those lines, yeah, I'd consider it. 12 million is a lot. I know you're hoping to get Byard back somewhere in that $9-10 million range, I'd say, maybe on a 2-year deal. So per, right around 20 million. 12 is a lot for Minkah. And remember, they did give up Jalen Ramsey to get him back from Pittsburgh as part of that deal. I think it was Ramsey, Jonnu Smith in the deal, I want to say, and then some draft picks went both ways. So, I mean, they did give up a really good asset in Jalen Ramsey to get him back. I don't know that it would just be a late round swap. I'm sure they'd probably want more of like a fourth or fifth rounder for him. And I probably wouldn't be willing to do that at that point. I think you kind of just figure it out. And I think he's a good player. I think he still has something left. I just don't know that it's $12 million worth plus a draft pick on top of it.
Javon Dexter and 2 7s. Who says no, right?
Hey, there you go.
That's fine.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, but so I think a lot of this does depend on who of the free agent safeties, who gets re-signed before free agency opens, right? Not necessarily like you're not going to go to free agency and then wait to see the prices necessarily, but like, if Cam Curl is available, if Kobe Bryant is available, like I feel like I could get those guys for the same price or less than what Minkah is going to cost me in salary cap space. And these guys would be much younger and locked into longer term deals. Like I agree. I would only make the trade if Byard's also not coming back, because I don't like the idea of like trading for these guys, him, or you could throw Jesse Bates from the Falcons in the same conversation, like expensive, nearing the older side, 1 year left in their deal, but really talented player who's been great in the NFL. Like, I don't like the idea of bringing one of these guys in and then a year later they're going to be free agents again and probably not going to bring them back. Or you can't count on bringing them back. So like, I want, like, if Byard's here, like he's the one that is kind of shorter term and you're drafting a replacement for him. I don't want to have 2 guys that are shorter term safety options and having to get long term plans. Like I want a short term guy and a long term guy with another long term plan in place behind him, and trying to put all your eggs in like a this year safety basket. It's not the end of the world, but I would just prefer a little bit more, bigger picture thinking there.
Agree.
All right, that will do it for this episode of the Bears Squad Show. Next week will be the final week of the show before free agency starts. So it's time. It is time. So maybe we'll see that Byard deal come next week. We'll have our normal schedule next week, Tuesday at 11, myself, Lauren, and Taylor, Friday at 10 with the 3 of us. So we'll talk to you guys next week. Lauren, enjoy the rest of the combine, and guys running around and run as fast as they possibly can. But for everyone else, we'll talk to you guys next week. Peace.